Welcome to Starting from Scratch, episode number 10 here in Southern California. And I finally got through all of the industries, or 99.9% of the industries, and changed the local symbols. So now everything's going to be ready to be spawned in automatically. Now I'm going over to the spawn points that I set up for the industries, and now I can start selecting the locals that I want tagged on these trains. So I'll go into mixed freight here for my Seligman spawn point, and I this is the IND industry spawn point. That's going to be bringing in our supply trains here. So I've just popped up my spreadsheet because I just want to make sure I've got all of the symbols. It's these five symbols here that are going into from off map from uh, east of Seligman, Arizona, and then going into Barstow Yard. And these are the symbols I'm going to use to have supply cars come in. So now I'll click this filter button and I'm just going to go down the list and just check yes on all of these local freight symbols that start with BNSF. This BNSF bare table storage I'll leave unchecked because I don't want that coming in on a supply train. That's for industries that process cars into bare tables like LAC. And then these KNG, I actually want to leave these as no because the cars for those two locals actually come from Winslow and they don't go to Barstow. So I'm going to keep those unchecked. But I'm going to go down the list here and check off all the rest. And it's up to you. You know, this is where Run 8 is so customizable. I'm going to make changes as I go along, as you'll see here. I'm gonna have some symbols that don't, or some train symbols that don't have every industry checked. So you don't have to have every BNSF local job on every supply train. And there's good reasons not to, which you'll see coming up. And then I'm also going to do these SJVRs out of Bakersfield Yard. I don't know if they only come from the north, those cars. I would have to think some come from Seligman, so I'll check those too as well. And then I'm going to actually add more duplicate symbols here. So I'm going to use a number. I'm just going to go 01 to differentiate. You'll see here, so I can differentiate between the identical train symbols. So these five will be 01s, and then I'm going to add a few more of the same ones, which will just give me finer control of what industries I want coming in, for supply cars. Because sometimes you'll get too many of a specific industry and you'll just get overloaded with an industry that takes a lot of cars will be more prominent on each supply train. So I'm going to add more symbols to spawn, and that way I can have some of those other supply trains not include the heavy industries, the ones that have a lot of cars. That way I just don't get buried. Now I'm going to just work my way down through all five of these symbols and just checking off every BNSF except for bare table storage and the two KNGs, which I accidentally put yes, as you might have noticed here, but I go back and fix them and I put them back to no. But just to start, just to keep things simple, I'm just gonna just check every local job for BNSF so that they show up on our supply train. And you can always go back, and I go back all the time. Always when you get when you start a when you're working a single player world, you're always coming up with ideas and tweaking things and adjusting the railroad, and that's what makes Run 8 fun because you can constantly change it. It's always something different, and you can always improve things and make it better. So now that I got all those checked, I want to add two more of each symbol here, two more identical. So another bell bar, two more bell bars, but I'm going to put them as O2 and O3. And you can see it'll automatically sort them. So now I got three at the top for bell bar, O1, O2, and O3. And those numbers at the end are just for me to differentiate between the 3 different supply trains. So I'm just going down here and doing this for every symbol. I'm just gonna have 3 versions of all 5 symbols. So we should have 15 total in here when we're done. And I don't like these 2 SJVRs that are in the BNSF, uh, Fresno and Bakersfield yard. I want those to be grouped with all the BNSF trains, not down in the SJVR section, just to make it easier and more organized. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm just looking at what industries those belong to, and now I'll pull up the industry editor and go into those industries. So I'm looking for Tricor Refining, and then I'm just gonna put BNSF here at the front. I should have done this when I was going through all the industries, but just one of those things that slipped through the cracks. Or as I did it, I realized I don't want just SJVR. I want it to be grouped with the BNSF ones. Maybe I'll change it back in the future. Who knows? But for now, I'll just put it that way. So now I'm just going through. I just put a filter on my spreadsheet here because it's a little bit easier. And there's just these few industries here. I just need to pop BNSF onto the front of the local freight symbol. So now I can go back into that spawn point, and I'm going to pull up the first train symbol here, click filter, and I'll scroll down, and you're going to see that the 2 SJVRs are now grouped in the BNSF section because I added BNSF. And you'll notice that they were unchecked, and that's because if you make a change to a local freight symbol, then it automatically unchecks them here and you got to redo it. So just something to be aware of. So now that I've got every industry checked off for all these symbols, I'm pulling up my spreadsheet and I'm just going to do a sort here by the max cars that each industry accepts. And I just want to look for the industries that take a ton of cars, like Plains LPG that I worked recently in a local job video. Some of these industries are set up for so many cars that if you have them checked on in here on every local supply train, you're just going to get hammered with cars for Plains LPG, just tons of tankers because that's how that industry is configured to the capacity is high. It's configured to take a lot. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to uncheck just I think like 5 or 6 industries that just take a ton of cars. I'm going to uncheck them from the majority of my supply train symbols and leave them as yes only on a couple. So that way I won't get, slammed with cars for that industry because they're only on a few of those symbols and auto when AI spawns in trains, it's random, but it remembers. So it won't spawn in the exact same symbol like 5 times before doing a different one. It'll go through all of them randomly and then repeat the whole list again. So by adding all these duplicates like I did with the ending in 01, 02, 03 for each symbol, it just helps fine tune and gives me the ability to apply only certain locals to each supply train and kind of just tailor because ultimately my goal here is that once I got things running smoothly, I'll keep tweaking it and checking some, unchecking some, and keep tweaking it so that I got a good balance and it makes sense and I'm not just getting because you could easily just get slammed with too many cars for a certain industry and then everything kind of gets it's unrealistic. So this allows you to kind of fine tune so you get a real nice flow and then it makes it really fun. So you could see there, I just highlighted the ones that I'm going to uncheck in purple from the majority of the symbols. And now I just sped up the video here. I'm just going fast through. Uh, I think I chose the ones that end in 01. I'm keeping all of them tagged as yes. and then the ones that end in '02 or '03, I'm coming in and I'm unchecking those ones that I had made purple here just to prevent me from getting hammered with too many with industries that take a ton of cars. Alright, so now that that's finished, what I wanna do oh, we got a problem here. I left the switches thrown after that trip from, Barstow to Bakersfield, that recent train trip that I took. I never put these switches, these crossovers back to straight, and it looks like we got a major traffic jam, so I gotta flip these back the correct way, and, I'm sure the dispatcher is not too happy with me, but we'll get it taken care of real quick so that he can get trains on the move again. Alright, now he's got the trains on the move again, and I wanna show you a new idea that I came up with that I've never tried yet, and we're gonna do it right now. So I'm jumping over to the end of the track on the way up to Stockton, California here at this is part of the new Fresno Modesto sub DLC. So I'm just gonna go to the very end of the track. Where am I at here? I gotta go back this way. And I'm gonna create a new industry at the end of the track, and the purpose of this is to dilute the supply trains because I know that's one thing that people complain about sometimes is the supply trains maybe they're too big and there's too many tagged cars for industries on them. So this is a way to kind of dilute it with cars that maybe are not going to Bar or they're going to go to Barstow and be sent over the hump. They'll go over the hump, but they're not gonna go to an industry on the Run 8 maps. They're gonna continue then on their way to either Pasco, Washington, or Stockton, California. So now what I need to do is I am gonna hit New Industry. This is in the, industry configuration. I think it's stock is Control-I to pop this up. And then I'm gonna add a name, so I got Pasco, Washington, and then under the, track what do you call that? Just putting Pasco there. That's like where you normally put the 3-digit code. And actually, I need that should be PAS. I made a mistake here by putting Pasco because it needs to match the hump yard at Barstow, which has a PAS track. And that's where these cars are going to go when they get sent over the hump. You'll see, I come back. I fix that later. And then for the local freight symbol, I'm just typing in here BNSF Pasco. And then edit track. So I'm just going to click that one. But you'll see it's a little confusing because then it goes invisible and you're wondering, did it work? And when you're creating a new industry, I was a little confused here myself. It always happens, but now I got it down. You also have to make sure you have at least some text in one of these boxes or it will not let you add the industry. So now I just added it. And the reason why the tracks still aren't red is because now I have to hit save. Let's see, I think I was fumbling with it a little bit here, but uh, there it is. So now I hit save, and now you see those red circles, so it lets you know that those are the industry tracks. So it's all configured correctly. And then I realized what I want to do is add an underscore just before the P here in Pasco. And that way you'll see later that'll just keep these off map local symbols uh, grouped together when I go to tag. Here, look at if you go now, I click here, click filter. See how BNSF Pasco's at the top of the BNSF list because of that underscore. So I'm going to do that for the other locations as you'll see here in a moment. And it just keeps it a little more organized in here, which makes it easier when you're setting up your symbols. Then I just decided I want to under the name to keep them grouped also like in the top in the industry menu if you're searching by name just to keep these off map locations grouped. I'm just adding off map to the industry name and that'll just keep them otherwise Pasco would be in the P's and Stockton would be in the S's and by doing it this way it'll just keep them all in one all together Just, I like to have things organized. Now what I need to do is choose what types of cars I want uh, to be spawning in on the supply train going to Pasco, Washington. So I'm not going to do all of them because I don't think there'd be auto racks or there wouldn't be an Amtrak auto rack car. Probably not like open hoppers coming from like Texas all the way up to Washington, maybe. I don't know. This is the thing. I don't know if you could do it however you want. And again, these are just to help dilute the supply trains. And you're going to see probably at the end of this video or in the next episode, you'll see it in action. I'll show you an example. So, in order to tell Run 8 which types of cars to spawn on the supply train for Pasco here, you have to have some text. So it doesn't in this case, normally what you would do for a normal industry is instead of having where I put Pasco on all these, you would have all your 3 2 for UP or 3 for BNSF, uh, 3-letter codes, typically off map destinations, and then separated by a comma. So you could have like, a whole bunch of them or just one, and then Run 8 will pick one of the ones, and once the industry processes those cars, Run 8 will then tag them with one of the options that you put in that were separated by a comma. But in this case, since we're not actually going to be servicing, we're not going to be dropping cars off here on these tracks ever. Run 8's not going to be processing them. I'm just putting Pasco. I think later I change it to Pasco, Washington. You could type whatever you want because it's just you just have to have some text there, and that for Run 8 to spawn in those cars. And then in this capacity column, I'm just putting 5. So most, I think you'll get somewhere between 1 and 5 of that car type, on when they spawn in. And again, that's something that I'll adjust later if I'm getting too many for Pasco or if I want more, so that my supply train's diluted even more with these cars. I can tweak that as we go along. And then also produces if you want them to come in loaded, then you want to move this to empty, and if you want them to come in empty, then leave it as produces loads. Uh, this is just random, so I think I put empties, but then I think I come back and maybe put some back as loads just to kind of randomize it. But, it's up to you however you want to do it. So now that I got that all done, I can save it and I'm going to do new industry and I'm just going to repeat that same process again, but this is going to be for Stockton. So this is going to be off map Stockton, California. And again, I'm just going to add cars and just for more dilution. And you'll see later how this will look. I've sped up the footage again and just so you could see real quick here. So I'm doing the same thing for Stockton. And then I decided here to change it. So I went back to my Pasco location and I'm just changing this to Pasco, Washington. I guess first I made it all caps and then I realized I changed my mind again. Let's make it that, but it really doesn't matter because they're not going to be tagged with that. Just as long as there's text in there. And then back to the Stockton one, and then I'm gonna do the same thing and fill in all the text here for the different types of cars that I want. And if this is super confusing, just wait till later. You'll see how it works. Okay, so now that those two are in there, I'm gonna go back to my spawn points for Seligman that we were working on earlier, back into mixed freight. And now if I hit filter, you see I got the Pasco and the Stockton at the top. I can hit yes on both. And now it's gonna the supply train will also include cars for Pasco, Washington, and Stockton, California. I repeated that same process and I added a industry here for San Diego and Watson Yard. So now I have 4 there, and I'm gonna put yes for those as well. So any cars coming from the east going spawning in at Seligman, heading towards Barstow, will have some cars for Watson Yard, which is down by Long Beach or San Diego or Washington or Stockton, which are north. And now what I can do is I'm going to add those into all of my supply train symbols here just to add a little bit of dilution. So now I'm going to go back to my Seligman here. I'm going to move my slider to the right because I'm ready for run 8 to automatically start dropping in these supply trains. And then I'm going to hit spawn to bring in the first one right now so we can take a look. And if I go to the AI status, I can find it. Usually it's at the bottom, but for some reason this one's a few up there. But there it is, the Galesburg, Illinois to Barstow, and it's got the -01. So this one should be tagged for all the industries because the O1's had everything. And here's our train automatically dropped in by Run 8, all with freight, mixed freight for industries on the map. And let's take a look. So you can see we've got Barstow 0102 for Cemex. We got some coal cars. Let's just take a look and see what's on this train. And now all these cars have tags that are going to work with the hump controller at Barstow. And it just makes it a lot easier too, because now I can just look at it and say, all right, well, these are for a local that works out of Barstow, because BAR is the yard. And then here's a Pasco car. See this one here for Pasco? And here's another one. So those are just going to get sorted on the hump and then just sent on north to Pasco. And then we've got another one out of Barstow Yard for Boron. Here's one, 2 bay going to Fresno. Reefer unit going to Fresno. So we got some Fresno cars here. And then more Fresno for different industries up there. Here's some for Los Angeles J Yard. Here's some of our PLS for Bakersfield Yard for Plains LPG. Let me move here so we can see a little bit better. Some more for LAJ. So you can see we got a really nice mix going here. And it just makes it so much easier too to know. I just look at the tag and I know it's got to go to Bakersfield or La Mirada's LMC right there. And when it gets to the when it gets into the yard at Barstow, we could just send it right over the hump and it'll just be all ready to rock and roll. There's some for Porphyry Yard, San Bernardino. More, so you can see there's a bunch already on this train for PLS because it takes a big orders. So that's why I unchecked that local job from some of the other symbols so that the PLS ones don't spawn in every single supply train. Hopefully all of this wasn't too confusing. If you're new to Run 8, don't feel out of place if it's extremely confusing because it's just something that takes, gameplay and time then it'll make more sense. But hopefully this helped explain some things and maybe gave you guys some good ideas to try out on your own single player games. Stay tuned because I'm going to be now putting this system to the test in continuing the SoCal series, which I think I got like 10 episodes in that series, and then I haven't had one for a while. So now that I've got all this done, and now that Run 8 will be spawning in trains automatically, I can start getting back to that series, and we'll continue on. So I'm really excited now because my eyes were starting to hurt. There was like 500, I think actually almost 600 industries in all of SoCal now. So it was a few weeks of doing a little bit at a time, and it's finally done. So now we're ready to go. So thanks for watching.